I told myself I'm never waking up to an alarm clock ever again. I go to sleep when my body tells me to go to sleep, and I wake up when my body tells me to wake up. By the time you hit about age 28, your testosterone starts to decrease 2 to 3% every single year. God didn't put me in this world to be a product of this problem. He put me here to fix it. A healthy patient is not going to drive revenue for them. They want to keep people sick, unfortunately. And I told myself, what job out there is the most rewarding job? Being a hero, right? Being a firefighter-paramedic. The only patients that he doesn't find toxins in are the ones that utilize an infrared sauna every single day.
Every single day.
We can go up to 100,000 milligrams in one sitting. So I started teaching kids how to swim because in Florida, the leading cause of death amongst children between the ages infants to 5 is drowning. The more I started educating myself in a lot of these alternative treatments and really understanding the way of taking more of that proactive, preventative approach to your health, success is not about money. It actually has nothing to do with money.
Hello and welcome to Wellness is Life podcast. I'm your host, Natalia Naila, and today I'm beyond excited to be sitting down with Sam Tejada. Sam started as the lifeguard, firefighter, and paramedic, and it's now the CEO and founder of Liquivida, one of the fastest growing wellness franchises in the country, and the author of How to Win in Modern Wellness. He's also the chairman of the Leadership Advisory Board for the American IV Association and a driving force in reshaping how we think about health, from sick care to true preventative wellness. Today, we're going to get into Sam's story from his early days in public service to becoming a leader in modern wellness. And he was also in Forbes magazine. Sam, it's so nice to see you today in my Hollywood studio. Thank you for coming all the way from Florida. How do you feel?
Natalia, I'm energized, especially after having some of this water here.
Special water from Area 1.
I love it.
You have to stop by at that store. But anyways, I've met you, I think last year at the A4M or even earlier somewhere at one of the conferences.
Right.
And we clicked. And I think I was following you on Instagram as well. You have an incredible podcast. You've been on Forbes magazine. When I was Googling you deeper for my interview, I was like, wow, you were on Forbes magazine. That's so cool. A beautiful article. And you've done so much incredible things, coming from being a firefighter. Then you worked as a paramedic,
right,
and actually starting as a lifeguard. So you've always been servicing and helping and saving people. And now you are doing something really incredible, helping people to take their health to the next level. You have a company Liquivida, which changing people's life with IV and blood testing and so much more. So I'm super excited to really dive in deeper and first of all, learn everything about you. How did you start your in this business? And we can just dive in and talk about biohacking, longevity, and so much cool stuff that is happening there in the space. And so other people can learn and take proactive things. So what really like for you growing up, and were you always drawn to helping people?
So Natalia, first, thank you for having me here, right? It's my actual first podcast in the Hollywood area.
I love that.
So, you're breaking my cherry for that. So, growing up was interesting for me. I'm an immigrant from Dominican Republic. I'm the youngest out of 4. So when we moved here to the United States, we grew up in the inner city. Things were a little bit tough, right? We didn't have money. And these type of things that I got exposed to really later on in life allowed me to kind of understand the issue of why people are sick, right? Especially people that don't have the resources to be able to eat healthy, right? Who can't afford to go to the Area 1 or Whole
Area
Foods,
1.
Area 1, any of these type of places. But one thing that I knew from a young age, I knew that I wanted to do something that was basically helping people. Right. My favorite TV show as a kid was Rescue 911.
Oh, yeah.
And I used to love it. I used to love this TV show. I used to love the doctors and the ER and everything else. And I wanted that job that was going to be the most rewarding job possible. And I told myself, well, what job out there is the most rewarding job? Being a hero, right? Being a firefighter-paramedic. So early on, I was thinking about how do I build myself up to that. And when I was 15 years old, I got certified as a lifeguard, and I started working for the public school system up north. I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, the public schools, they had pools inside indoor pools. So I started working as a lifeguard, and when I moved to Florida my senior year in high school, I started working for the YMCA, and it had a beautiful indoor pool. And I started working as a lifeguard. But then I told myself, I says, you know what? I really want to learn how to really help people before the emergency. So I became a swim instructor. So I started teaching kids how to swim because in Florida, the leading cause of death amongst children between the ages of infants to 5 is drowning. So I started teaching how to swim. And, fast forward for that year, once I graduated high school, I went straight into EMT, paramedic, and fire academy to become a firefighter-paramedic. And then I became a fireman.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And I know while you actually worked there for 12 years. That's is that true?
I did. I started at the age of 20. So it was funny when I started, I used to go, hang out after the union meetings with all the guys. And, the guys some of them are in their 50s, 60s. I couldn't even have a beer with the guys because I was too young.
Oh.
So I started from the age of 20, and I worked until I was 32. I'm 38 now. So I retired 6 years ago. I've got vested in the pension and everything. And, the reason why I retired early is because my business, Liquivida, took off.
Which is amazing. And it's such a short period of time you've done. And how many Liquivida studios or med spas do you have across the country now?
So we're a franchisor. So we've sold over 40 locations. More than half are open now. The other ones are in different stages of development.
That's incredible. I love that. And I know going back to firefighting job, you actually, the older gentlemen, they were looking up to you because you were showing them the way how to be healthy. You really realized that, look, even though we're saving other people's life, but we are not here saving our lives. And so you kind of like tweaked that and showed the guys, and everybody started asking you, what do you do? Show us what's your daily routine? And can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so that was actually a very interesting moment in my life. When I first got hired at the fire department, the first year you're on this probationary period where it's like you can't mess up, because if you mess up, you could lose your job. And when I started, there was a lot of these old timers, and I got there and I would look at these guys that are responsible to save other people's lives, and they're walking around with these big bellies. They're these firemen with the big, mustache and this big belly. And I'm looking at it saying, well, something's not right here. I don't want to look like that when I get older. And, we live in the firehouse for 24 hours when we're on shift. So you start seeing the lifestyle of what they're eating. There's a lot of fried food and everything. And for that first year, ironically, what happened with me, I actually got out of shape because I was living their lifestyle, eating with them, eating all the fried food and everything else. And I got really out of shape at the age of 20. And I told myself, this is not Sam Tejada. So I decided to make a shift and started working on myself, right? Nutrition, exercising. And during that time when I was doing it, I actually got a hard time from a lot of the firefighters there. And eventually, when they saw exactly really what I was doing and how I was taking care of my health and how I could combat a lot of the sleep deprivation and the stress that we would see as firefighter paramedics, people started adapting to it, and people started actually asking me, coming to me and saying, hey, I went to my doctor, my blood pressure's high, my cholesterol's I see what you're doing and how you're eating. Is there any way you can help me?
I love that.
And when I got that type of response, that's where I said, so you know what? All that hard time for that year that they were giving me, now it's coming back and they're seeing that they need to make that shift.
And that's
too.
so cool that at that age you actually realize that because, how many kids do you see out there that don't want to change? They're just going with the flow, right? They're just, maybe now because of the social media, we see that. But back in the days, it would be harder to step out of that zone because you might lose a job, right? So it's so cool that you did that. And I guess your calling was always there, right? To be healthy, stay healthy. And so from firefighters to becoming a CEO, do you remember the exact moment you decided to take off your uniform?
Yeah, so I was always, I've always had that hustler mentality where since a kid, I was a kid that when it would snow outside, I'd go to all the neighbors and see if I could shovel their driveway for money. If it was fall and the leaves were, I'd rake your leaves for you to pay me. So I was always kind of into business as a kid. So in the fire department, we work 24 hours on and we're off for 48 hours. So most firefighter-paramedics, they supplement their income by doing some kind of side hustle. Some of them have landscaping companies, other ones painting, pressure cleaning. I decided to go into the health and wellness sector on my days off. And it was really just to supplement my income. I wasn't thinking about doing a big business or anything like that. And when I started Liquivida, I was already on duty for about 6 years. And I started Liquivida. And I started seeing how much traction, without even doing any marketing, I was getting very affluent people finding Liquivida and coming to do these IV drips.
So how did you go about and deciding to actually do the IV med spa? Did you learn it from somewhere? You went to a med spa itself, you got an IVs and you got an amazing health boost and you're like, wow, it sparked you. I think that's what I want to do. How did it spark the whole med spa IV?
So my part-time gig in the health and wellness where I started, I actually was doing all the specialized blood work for a company called Cenegenics. So Cenegenics was one of the pioneers in functional medicine. And actually my mentor in the functional medicine space was their chief medical officer, Dr. Robert Willix. He was world-renowned. He was a former heart surgeon who decided to leave heart surgery, went and studied with the natives in Peru and became a shaman.
I love that.
So think about it, a heart surgeon who goes, becomes a shaman. And if you ever see a picture of him, actually, he's the guy in the middle of the book right there.
Okay, we'll talk about this book in a bit.
So Dr. Willix, if you look at him, he's got, the Einstein mustache, drives a Harley, he's a shaman, raw vegan, so it's like such a unique guy, but very well respected and extremely smart. And I was just learning from him. And a lot of his clients were some of the most affluent people on the globe. And what was happening is when I'd go to their homes to do the blood work, they would always tell me, hey, when I go to my house in California or my house in Colorado, there's an off-duty firefighter-paramedic who does these IVs on me, and I feel fantastic. And I had it was about 5 different patients that told me about this and were telling me about how I should bring it to Florida. And that's where it clicked. After I had like the 5th person tell me, I says, let me take a look into this. And I started working with Dr. Willix, and he says, this is good stuff.
Yeah.
There's a lot of science behind it. He's done it before. And then that's how Liquivida came about.
And your first med spa was in Fort Lauderdale?
It was near Fort Lauderdale. It was in the same county. It was actually in Coconut Creek.
Oh, Coconut Creek, yeah. And so is it still there?
It is. It is, yeah.
And then how long did it take you to really catch up and, started seeing successful and people actually coming and you got so busy and you're like, wow, I'm into something, and to build this into a franchise?
Yeah, so it started really just ramping up, and I saw, with businesses, you have to figure out if there's a need. And we all know, especially today, how sick our people are, and there is a need. So at that point, that's where everything started to click. The more I started educating myself in a lot of these alternative treatments and really understanding the way of taking more of that proactive, preventative approach to your health. Remember, I was doing that, but I was still at the fire department in the traditional system. So now I'm seeing what works, and then I'm seeing something that I'm a product to the problem. So then that's where it really started affecting me, where I'm like, when I'm going to the fire department and running these 911 calls, and I'm seeing it over and over, right? Because remember, you basically run a specific neighborhood where you get that initial 911 phone call. You transport that person to the hospital, to the ER where the quote-unquote experts are, right? And then all of a sudden, 6 months later, you go to that same person, take them to the hospital for the same situation.
Wow.
And then all of a sudden, you're getting that phone call every other month, to then every single month, to then every other week.
Till they die.
Until they die. And for me, it started getting to my head. It says, I'm taking them to where the experts are at. Why is this person continuing to circle down the drain? This doesn't make sense. God didn't put me in this world to be a product of this problem, right? He put me here to fix it. So that's why I got to a point where I said, you know what? I know what we need to do. It's what Liquivida is doing.
That's beautiful. Why do you think conventional medicine often resists adopting preventative medicine?
Why is it difficult for them to adopt
Yeah.
alternative medicine, functional medicine? You know, I'll say how it is. Politics is involved, right? It comes down to money, right? When you look at the pharmaceutical companies, when you look at the traditional system, at the end of the day, a healthy patient is not going to drive revenue for them, right? So they want to keep people sick, unfortunately. You look at other countries, the doctors in other countries get paid to keep you healthy versus here in America, the doctors get paid to basically to try to
feel you
get you
sick.
healthy once you're already sick.
Yeah.
You know?
It's crazy. Like my mom, she has diabetes, and her primary doctor gives her so many pills. Literally, every month they send her full bag of pills. She doesn't take them. She just throws them away. And she tells the doctor, please do not give me this. She's like, no, I have to. They have to meet these paychecks, right? So she's like, just throw them away if you don't want to take them. How bad is that?
That's sad.
Can you talk about some of the treatments or services you offer at Liquivida?
So Liquivida, we put people through what we call the Vita journey, right? So the Vita journey consists of 5 different pillars. So for us, it's, number one thing is really understanding the person's lifestyle, how they live, the type of job they have, their stress levels, what they're exposed to, like environmental toxins, do they drink, do they smoke, things of that nature. And then our ultimate goal is putting them through that Vita journey, which the different 5 pillars, which are the 5 divisions of Liquivida, are our wellness side, right? Where wellness includes hormone optimization, our IV drips, it includes comprehensive blood analysis and all other diagnostics, so we get a good bird's eye view of what's happening with the patient's health. We have our medical weight loss division, which is a big division, right? We utilize certain peptides, nutrition, exercise in the weight loss division. Then we have our medical aesthetics division, where we're using a lot of Botox, fillers, dermal fillers. We're utilizing natural things like PRP as well too. We do body contouring in the medical aesthetic side. Then our 4th division is regenerative medicine, where we use certain peptides and also stem cell derived products like exosomes to help people with injuries, help people with regenerating tissues in their body, etc. And then our last division is our sexual health division, which we do for both males and females, and we have certain technologies for that as well.
Wow, so you basically it's a one-stop shop. You come in and you anti-age and rejuvenate and do it all. I love that. Not too many med spas do that.
Yeah, it's not the easiest thing to do as a business owner, because I don't want to be a jack of all trades, but at the end of the day, we know that for someone to live a good, optimized life, right, health-wise, these are things that you have to implement from all of these 5 different pillars.
So when clients come to Liquivida, what's the one thing you most want them to feel?
So I want them to feel in control of their health. That is the most important thing, energetic, I want them to feel good, energetic, and in control of their health. And that's actually our mission.
Yeah, and teach them right habits, because it takes, at the end of the day, right habits.
Oh, yeah.
Show them, and once they start feeling incredible, they're like, wow, I couldn't believe that, what I did before.
Right.
So that's so cool. So you've currently serving as a chairman of the Leadership Advisor Board of the American IV Association. How has the role shaped your approach to running Liquivida?
So, the American IV Association was around for a couple years before I was appointed as the chairman. And, there was a need to really scale the association with the growth of the IV therapy business nationwide, actually globally at this point. And it was about a year and a half ago, actually in 2024, January 2024, where they basically reached out to a few different CEOs of the bigger companies in the IV space about us putting a leadership advisory board together. And we saw that there's a need with a lot of regulatory issues. And, there's people that get into this business just to capitalize and make money. And it's scary sometimes. So, obviously I'm very active on social media, on the news. And, when they had to decide who to appoint as the chairman, it was me. So I willingly took that position, because ultimately my goal was to let's scale this. Let's make sure people know about IV vitamin therapy, the science behind it, the benefits behind it. And, that's really helped me shape the industry, collectively with a lot of the other leaders.
That's beautifully. So can you explain simply how Liquivida IV therapy differs from just taking vitamins early?
Significant difference, right? When you take vitamins, any kind of vitamins, minerals, amino acids orally, it has to go through the digestive route, right? Most of us in the United States have digestive issues. It could be anything from IBS, it can be heartburn that you're having, acid reflux, things of that nature, where it reduces even more of the absorption. A lot of people have leaky gut as well. So when you bypass the digestive route and you go intravenously, you get 100% absorption at the cellular level, right? So not only that, when you take a lot of vitamins by mouth, the reason you have to take it 2 to 3 times a day is for you to actually accomplish the therapeutic dosage for the effect that you're trying to get. You have to take it so frequently. When you go intravenously, you can actually go to higher therapeutic dosages to get even better results. And I'll give you an example. Vitamin C. If you take 2,000 to 3,000 milligrams of vitamin C at once, you might be okay, right? When you take more than that, your digestive system gets irritated.
Yeah, and you feel sick,
diarrhea, nauseated. Intravenously, we can go up to 100,000 milligrams in one sitting. A big difference,
Yeah.
2,000 to 3,000 milligrams versus 100,000 milligrams. Where we're not doing 100,000 milligrams on every patient.
Right, it's kind of you have to test them before you do that, right?
Yeah. That's going to be more for like sick patients,
sick patients.
Cancer. And
exactly.
things of that
Yeah.
nature.
So how often would someone do such, like, I know there's a Maya cocktail, which is very popular, which has all the supplements, all the nutrients that you need kind of upload once a month. But what other IVs would you recommend on a weekly basis, monthly basis? What would you recommend someone showed up at the med spa and to uplift there and continuously having them coming back to you in a basis?
So our goal is always to take a personalized approach, and this is what we call precision medicine, right? So there's no cookie cutter method when it comes to your health. So for us, we're very data driven. So what I'd like to do with our patients is always getting a comprehensive blood analysis, which part of that blood work consists of doing a micronutrients test, where we're looking at several vitamins, minerals, amino acids, fatty acids, and seeing what the patient has as deficiencies wise, right? So we evaluate their deficiencies, and then from there, we best select which IV drip is going to be best for them, and then create a regimen. And part of that process is us actually trending that blood work where, after a few weeks, we're going to repeat it and see how your levels are looking, if they're within optimal range. And if not, we know that we have to do the IVs a little bit more frequently. And then from there, we start going into more of a maintenance routine based off of the data.
I love that. I love that data because many times you go just to any med spa where they have IV, you have to tell them. They just have basic menu, like, oh, you want a NAD, you want vitamin C. They didn't ask you how you feel. You just like, okay, well, can I have a Mayer cocktail? And a lot of people don't even know you might not need that in your blood, right? They don't retest you. And how many people you can even overdose in such ways? I've seen it myself actually getting so sick, like 2 hours after certain IVs, I just couldn't get up till the next day.
Wow.
It happened to me because whatever was in that IV was probably either allergic or it gave me, I don't know what gave me, but I'm like, wow, this is so bad. So without doing any testings, and that was prior, I was a biohacker. I didn't know better. Like before when the IVs just started, like everybody's like, oh, let's do the IVs. They're so good for you. And so, yeah, I love that approach.
Yeah, and let's talk about that because that's important, especially me being the chairman of the association. And we just had our media day. And part of the media day that we did was talk about some of these topics. And I want to put emphasis on that because you brought something up that's very important. This IV business, when you go get these IVs, this is an actual clinical treatment. You're inserting a needle directly in the vein. You're bypassing a lot of your protecting mechanisms going directly into the vein. And you're forcing a high concentration of these different nutrients directly into your cells, right? So with that said, this is not something that you should be going into these clinics or these IV clinics and treating it as a smoothie shop where you're just picking it off a menu.
But that's how they do it.
I know. And this is where I want to put the emphasis. That has to stop,
It
right?
has to stop.
We have to actually connect with our patients and see what they need. Look at their deficiencies and create this personalized to the individual.
Yeah, I don't even go to any IV med spas unless if I'm at my functional doctor here in Pasadena, Dr. Clement Lee. We do the test. We know exactly what needs to be done. And actually, one of my girlfriend, early in the days when NAD just became popular, they didn't test you for NAD, what levels you were. They were just like, oh, everybody needs the same dosage. So she almost died.
Wow. Wow, yeah,
And
you gotta be careful
the
with
thing
that.
is, the doctor wasn't on the promises. The nurse, she did not know what to do.
That's scary.
So please help. And, with your advisory board, maybe we can make sure that doesn't happen. I'm sure it happens a lot.
Yeah, we've seen it happen. We put together also a scientific advisory board where we have the top doctors of all these companies involved. Our chief medical officers, Dr. Christopher Davis, who's my business partner, he's an interventional cardiologist. You got to meet him at the red carpet event.
Yeah.
He's part of it. Dr. Rollis, who's the chief medical officer of Drip Bar, he's based out of Canada. He's part of it. He's big into high dose vitamins. He just published a book on it. We have Dr. Seitz, who's the chair of the scientific advisory board. And these guys, these doctors, and we have a few pharmacists and also PhD scientists that are all working together, and they're evaluating a lot of this data of what's happening to make sure we're advising the industry correctly.
I love that. If someone comes into your med spa, out of all the IVs treatments, what is the most impactful that you see all the time? And going back to vitamin C, we know that at certain dosage, what would be the most impactful dosage of vitamin C for someone to do? And I know if you're pretty sick, you start with certain dosage, but for like a normal person who wants to optimize their vitamin C dosage, what would be the optimum milligrams?
So the one that we typically do on most of our patients is 15 grams,
Okay.
which equates to 15,000 milligrams of vitamin C in the IV drip. Now, if someone's combating something like an autoimmune disease or severe inflammation in their body for some other reason, then we can go up on the vitamin C levels.
Right.
But ultimately, the type of results that people are seeing from the IV drips, they get a good sense of liveliness. And what do I mean by that? They get energy that's not chemically induced. And they feel fantastic again because their body has the nutrients that it was missing.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the IV drips and the IV treatments we're doing, right now, I would say the most impactful ones are the ones that are helping remove a lot of these toxins out of your body, which, as you know, right now with the MAHA movement, it's been known about all of these different environmental toxins, the toxins in the foods, and these things, they sit in your body. They sit in your bones. They sit in your fat cells, and you got to get rid of them, right?
Yeah.
Because they have a huge impact in your overall health. They stick to your lipid membranes inside of your body, and they cause gene expression change, which then disease can develop. So we do one of our IV drips. It's called Plaquex.
Okay.
It's phosphatidylcholine. And this is what we called lipid membrane exchange therapy, right? Where it helps clean a lot of these toxins out of your body. And it gets people back to normal, even very sick people.
What about CBD?
So the CBD IVs, we recently started doing the CBD IVs. A lot of benefits behind it. I don't know if
I've done it. I'm doing them.
Yeah.
My mom is doing them in the past 2 months every week, and I cannot tell you how she's doing incredible.
Amazing.
But as well, we're adding methylene blue. We're adding cyber for the brain. It's called the
peptide.
The peptide, yeah. I forgot the name. So, but CBD is also great for detoxing, removing all the pathogens, molds, all that stuff. So let me tell you a quick story on CBD. My doc, he goes, okay, we're gonna go into CBD. We start with a smaller dosage. I don't remember exactly, maybe 16 milligrams, something like that. you're going to feel very sick for the next day. It takes about 2 hours after it's going to start kicking in. You feel high fever, like maybe body pain and all that. The first one, it didn't do anything for me. My mom was kind of a little bit sick, laying in bed for like just 24 hours. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm fine. Probably there's nothing for me to remove from my body. I was like, let's up the dose. He's like, okay. So we went with the stronger dose the next week. And I had to drive back to the desert because I live in Palm Springs, about 2.5 hours away from here. And I get in my car after the CBD drip. And literally within an hour, I had to pull out on the road, on the freeway. I couldn't even drive, barely pull out an exit. I just found a spot because I was kind of like, my body was giving up. It was shaking. It was just this kind of like a dizziness and almost like feeling like I'm going to be losing the, control.
Right.
So I crawled in the back of my car and I started shaking.
Boy.
And I've never experienced anything like body pain, shaking, fever went up. And he told me all these things, so I expected. And I'm laying, it's already 5 p.m. I'm like on the side of the road. I'm not sure which neighborhood I'm at. So finally I'm like, oh my God, I got to call my friend here in LA to come and save me. So I barely got my phone and I'm like, trust me, I couldn't even get my phone. I was shaking like that.
Wow.
And so I cut my phone. I was like, can you come and help me? He's like, where are you? I'm just going to send you my, drop location. So he came and he saved me. He drove me to desert, to my home. And it literally took about 5 hours. After that, you're feeling great. So, but what it does, CBD, it just starts removing all the pathogens, works and it finds where the pathogens are. Like in my case, they were sitting in my heart because my heart was giving me some kind of a problem for the next 5 days. Like my heart variability at night was really high. So what's your experience with CBD?
So I did it for the first time at the Vibe conference, which was last year in Boston, and I had a phenomenal results from it. I felt very relaxed, not in a way where I felt high, at whatsoever at all. I just felt relaxed. Any kind of tension or pain throughout my body was gone. And I did a higher dose than the typical initial dose because I feel like I got a pretty good tolerance overall in my body. And it was so impactful for several days where I actually reached out to the guys behind the company, which it's a company that they're the only IV therapy CBD available globally called Pico.
Okay.
Pico IV. They're the ones that manufacture it. And I reached out to them. I says, guys, I want to help you really scale this. And they're actually part of the association. They're a member of the association now. So we're working with them to really bring this to the next level.
This is so incredible. I'm telling you, my mom has been doing it the past 2 months. And the first 2 times she was sick. Actually, the second time I'm like, Mom, how you feeling? She's like, I'm sick. I'm like, I'm sick too. Like, we're like both, right? So, and now she's been doing every week. I haven't done yet another one, but she's been feeling incredible. No sickness. It just took that 2-3 sessions and that's it. And now she's just improving. Everything is moved, whatever needs to be moving. And every time she does, like, Mom, how you feel? She's like, great.
That's amazing. And let me tell you, the CBD has a huge benefit for anti-inflammatory properties. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it brings inflammation down very quickly.
Yeah. But you need to have an experienced one to do these IVs too, right? So make sure you go to a right clinic.
Definitely go to the right person. Yeah.
All right. So what's the biggest challenge you faced scaling Liquivida and how do you overcome it?
So, initially when I started Liquivida, this is almost 15 years ago, right? And back then, when you tell someone, hey, I'm going to put a needle in your arm and give you these vitamins, not too many people would accept that, So we had to focus tremendously on educational marketing, where we had to educate the actual consumer on what this is and the benefits of it. So that consisted of a lot of getting powerful people to speak about it, highly educated individuals, doctors, researchers to talk about it, to let people know that there is a benefit and there is science behind it. So that was part of it. Overcome that. Now today, I think one of the hardest things in the functional medicine space in general is the regulatory bodies that are out there, right? That are really being funded by these bigger groups, the big food companies, the big pharma companies. So that's been challenging, to say the least. It's requiring a lot of efforts to work with these regulatory bodies and get them educated at the level that they need to be before they make some of these decisions that impact many lives. And now I think this year, and I didn't think I would see it this quick with the whole MAHA movement. There's going to be a tremendous change in the course of medicine now. This is the change that we've all been praying
excited.
for.
We're all excited
Yeah.
about it.
100% we are. Yeah.
This is incredible change in every way for health industry, for us to really help people out there without doing it like, shh, we
Right.
can't. We have to hide certain, things like even last year when I was doing EBU here in LA, like I went to this institute and the doctor, she's like, yes, we have to be very careful. We can't advertise it. If someone comes to our office to audit, we have to hide everything. How crazy
Right.
is that, right?
Very, very. I could tell you stories of what I've seen happen with other people where, the FDA and these other organizations, they come in like almost like they're doing a drug bust or something like that with the guys with the BDU pants and the bulletproof vest. It's like, whoa, all we're doing is taking care of the little poor person who has an autoimmune disease.
Exactly.
We're not doing any kind of crazy crime here. So, but yeah, I think this is finally going to be that shift that we're looking for.
It's changing. People now finally like, yes, let's get all the plasmapheresis now, which Next Health is doing it.
Yeah.
And I just interviewed Dr. Jonathan Koo at Extension Health. He's having that. And he's bringing more interesting devices from Switzerland as well. So it's happening.
Yeah.
And this is so exciting. Yes, it costs money right now, but we're going to get there where it's going to be affordable. And hopefully insurances will jump in.
That would be amazing.
And we'll start covering these health interventions.
Yeah.
So that's what we're hoping for, right?
I would love that. That would be really amazing.
So you also offer DEXA scan, VO2 max, and some other things. So how is DEXA scan and VO2 max is important for someone starting in a health journey? Can you dive in, and especially VO2 max?
Absolutely. So, as I mentioned earlier, data is extremely important. As an individual, you should understand your data. That's the only way that you're going to be able to actually improve and perform at your peak levels. And the best way I could put it is like when you went through grade school, you got a report card, right? There's a reason why you got a report card. So we could see exactly how you're doing academically, right? If there's a certain area, math or reading, that you're not doing too well, your report card's going to reflect that. And it gives us the opportunity to work with your parents or your mentor or, whoever it is, so you can improve in those areas. So same thing with your health, because there's a lot of people out there that say, I just don't want to know. You should know, because if not, it's going to affect the way you live your day-to-day life. So with the DEXA, what makes the DEXA different, it's the golden standard to understand body composition analysis. So many people are used to just getting on a regular scale. Okay, well, a regular scale just tells you total weight. Well, what is that total weight made up of, right? I want to know how much subcutaneous fat, the adipose fat you have, which is more the fluffy fat. I want to know how much visceral fat you have, which is the fat that lines your organs, which if you have a high percentage of that, that's indicative of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and all kinds of other illnesses. I want to know how much lean mass, how much muscle you have. And I also want to know your intracellular, extracellular water. I want to know what your body's made up of. So when we put you through a health journey, we can trend that, right? A lot of people go on these weight loss programs and they're losing weight, but they don't even know what kind of weight they're losing. They're losing muscle, which it is the complete opposite of what you want when you're talking about longevity and health span. So the DEXA scan gives us that data to be able to trend it throughout that process.
Yeah. And you should do it like if you're on a journey, like every 3 months.
Right. Yep.
What about VO2 max and how important? Like, by the way, I just did my first second VO2 max, and in New York Extension Health, and I was surprised that, let's say, if I'm not working out just normal day, all I have to consume 1,300 calories a day. That's for my body. I'm like, wow, that's kind of a nothing. It's almost fasting in a way. But if I work out, then probably 400 calories more. So for my body, that was like good to know.
Right. You see how amazing that is when you have that data?
It is so cool,
Yeah.
right? And we're not saying, oh, calculate your calories, but it's good to know not to overeat, have maybe smaller meals instead of having bigger meals. And what else do you think VO2 max does, and why it's so important for each person to know?
Yeah, and see that's the importance of understanding that data. And I've had my own challenges where I didn't know why I wasn't losing some stubborn fat, and I'd go mountain biking all the time, and I'd go out there, and I'd hit it hard, and it got to a point where I did my VO2 max, and I was talking to one of my coaches, and Sam, you're going way too hard. Your heart rate when you go mountain biking is too high. It's good cardiovascular activity, but you're not in your fat burning zone. I was just, oh. And then I started just kind of cruising on the mountain bike, and I got rid of the stubborn fat.
Wow, isn't that amazing?
But that's where that data comes in. So when you're looking at like the VO2 max, we're looking at cellular health, we're looking at cardiovascular health, and we're looking at pulmonary health, right? It's been like the number one test for testing mitochondrial health. Now there's actual tests that we can actually look at the mitochondrial cells for mitochondrial clumping, for mitochondrial potential, and all that other stuff. But when we're working with like a lot of high-performing athletes also, we have the ability to actually help them build up their endurance based off of the data that we get from the VO2 max. Now, the technology we use one that's called PNOE.
No, yeah. I did PNOE, yeah. But I also did the other one too, the old classic one, the running on the treadmill.
Yeah, they have the core device and then also the Parvo, which I've had all of them at the office. The Parvo device is the old school one with the 12-lead EKG. Really needs an expert like a cardiologist to evaluate it. And that's probably going to be the most effective one if you have someone who understands how to actually read the whole reporting. Now, PNOE has a beautiful reporting that's easy to use. And their science, especially implementing AI, has really surpassed a lot of the other ones out there. But, part of the device that we use with PNOE, it's not just the VO2 max, it's also the RMR. Which is
the metabolic.
Yeah, the resting metabolic rate. So that one is very interesting, right? Because the resting metabolic rate allows me to actually see how many calories you're burning at the rested state.
Right.
And then, people always ask, well, why do I want to know that? Because now I can actually tell you how many calories, what are your macros that you need to intake throughout the day to accomplish your goals. If it's losing weight, if it's building endurance, putting on lean mass, we can go ahead and take that data, calculate exactly what you need to do throughout the day.
Right, and they can also tell you cardiovascular health, your lungs health, which is cool. I did that one, and I was actually pretty good on that scale. So I was like, yay.
Amazing. I love it.
I'm doing a good job. Let's see. So a lot of people these days overwhelmed by wearing wearable devices like Aura Skin and Whoop and this and that. How do you help clients make sense of it and turn that information into real actionable steps?
Absolutely. So I wear my Aura ring. I got this one here. They stopped making the Gucci one.
Oh, so they was like last year. No, 2 years ago, right? Yeah, it's a cool one.
I still have mine. I'm not giving it up. So I love my Aura ring.
Yeah, me
I love
too.
my wearables. And it can be a lot for some people, right? But again, I go back to the importance of the data and utilizing it as a tool to work towards better, right? So like with the Aura ring, my favorite part of the Aura ring is my sleep data behind the Aura ring.
It's my favorite.
Because the thing is I'm a high-performing kind of individual who's nonstop. I'm traveling a lot. And my sleep is off sometimes, So the next morning I get the readiness score. So then I evaluate myself there and then kind of understand, okay, what can I do to make it better? Maybe I get off my phone a little bit earlier. I make sure I eat a little bit earlier than closer to my sleep. So all of those things have a huge impact on your sleep. And for me, understanding the importance of sleep, that's where your body recovers, right? So I want to make sure that the next day or a few weeks down the line when I'm traveling, I want to make sure my immune system's going to be on peak. So sleeping is very important. That feeds into all of that.
Yeah.
So data's important.
Let's talk about sleep really quick because Brian Johnson is a very big proponent on sleeping. He says sleep is number one. It should be your profession. And how important is sleep? And how do you recommend your patients to take that first step to get a better sleep?
Sleep is extremely important. It's at the top of my list, right? And I say that being a retired firefighter-paramedic, where I'd be at the firehouse for 24 hours, and I had the worst sleep. I experienced 12 years of sleep deprivation. And it wasn't until I actually retired from the fire department that I really noticed, 6 months after I wasn't at the fire department, I noticed that the last 12 years was killing me. So with sleep, one of the first things that I did when I left the fire department, I told myself, I'm never waking up to an alarm clock ever again. I don't wake up to an alarm clock. I go to sleep when my body tells me to go to sleep, and I wake up when my body tells me to wake up. And since then, I get about 5 hours of sleep.
Is that enough?
Most people would think it's not enough. Now, remember, Sam is the wellness guy who has data, right? So I don't get a midday crash. I don't need to caffeinate myself. Obviously, I'm taking all of my correct supplements. I'm doing my exercise. I'm eating the right nutrition. And for me, those 5 hours of sleep, based off my data, right, my sleep data, works for me. It's not going to work for everybody else. But again, I wake up when my body tells me to wake up. So what do I do to prepare for sleep? So I have one thing on my phone that I click it 3 times, and it puts a red filter. And I utilize that after about 7 o'clock. So I always have the red filter, so I'm not being exposed to consistent blue light.
Right.
I turn off a lot of the lights in the house just to not have them on. And I allow my body to start winding down to go to sleep, right? Dinner, when I'm eating, I'm not snacking anywhere close to sleep time. I make sure it's about 2 hours before I plan on going to sleep to make sure my body's not focused on digesting the food, where it's keeping your heart rate up, while you're sleeping. So, but yeah, sleep is just so important.
And also for guys, also not to drink too much liquid before you go to sleep, so you don't get up in the middle of the day
Right.
to bathroom breaks.
Yeah.
So what would you suggest for a male population? When should they start drinking water or teas or whatever they drink? How many hours before to go to sleep?
I've noticed it more on the older men, right, that typically will start having some prostate issues and whatnot.
Well, these days, not just older men, trust me. Even
Oh,
younger guys in their 30s already is having these issues.
It's scary how young it's starting to happen
Yeah.
now, right? Historically, it's been older, but yeah, you're absolutely right. Now you're seeing guys in their 20s
Yeah,
having these
they're
issues.
getting up twice a night.
Yeah. Which that leads to a whole nother conversation of some reasons of why that's happening, right? A lot of the hormones and stuff in the foods and whatnot. But with men, like to begin with, in the morning, you should have a nice glass of water.
Right,
When you
always,
wake up,
yeah.
and drink throughout the day your water. But I would say, to reduce the amount of water intake at least a couple hours before you go to sleep. Same thing with food. I would reduce them both.
Right, beautiful. And do you wear those blue lighting glasses?
So I have. I'm not the typical wellness guy who's just walking around with them
Yeah.
and whatnot, but I do have something cool coming out when it comes to those. We're not going to
Can't
talk
wait,
too
can't
much
wait.
about
All
it,
right,
but
no
you'll be
problem,
one of
no
the first ones to receive it because there's 3 different tints to it.
Yeah.
You got the yellow, orange, and
Orange,
red,
yeah.
and they all have a certain benefit. And you see a lot of the biohackers always walking around with 3 sets of these
Right,
glasses, right? They're not going to have to do that anymore.
I love that.
So.
I love that because I only wear, I love Aviva Rays because they have just clip-ons. But honestly, I just do yellow because even though if I put orange, it's hard for me to even go around my house. You know what I mean? My house is already dimmed and I have this orange thing. I'm like, where am I going?
Yeah.
So I can't wait to see what are you going to come up with.
Well, let me tell you this. What if I told you there's a pair of glasses that you can put on, that it's clear, right? And on your phone, on an app, you have the ability to control the percentage of blue light that is coming in through those lenses, right? And then you also, by just hitting a button, you can change the tint from yellow to orange to red.
That's beautiful.
Plus, you can get all the data.
This is high tech. This is AI now. We're talking.
There's nothing like
which is
this.
so cool, Like we wanted to minimize things and make it much more easier, right?
Oh, yeah.
Instead of having all these different sunnies. So anyways, what are some surprising facts people should know about hormone therapy? And that's a big topic.
It is. It is. So I'll start off with men, right? By the time you hit about age 28, your testosterone starts to decrease 2 to 3% every single year. So you'll get a lot of people that become stubborn and don't want to do hormone therapy. It's, I want to be natural. Well, you can. You can age the same way your great-grandparents did, your grandparents and everything else, and potentially have a bad quality of life. But we're talking about vitality and vigor, right? We have science and technologies in place to be able to combat that. So if you are someone who's suffering from the symptoms of hormone issues that not being within the optimal range, there is a solution for that. We always try to take more of the natural route first. If that doesn't work, then we have bioidentical hormones to be able to get you where you need to be to have good vigor and vitality.
So let me go back to how would a person know, especially a young man, that he's having a testosterone problem? Also, what's the natural way to go about? Because I have some certain clients in their late 40s, and we see that testosterone data on the biomarkers are very low, let's say 240 or 300. We want for a man to go up to 700 to 800.
Right.
So how would, first of all, a man would know that is the testosterone problem? And also, a lot of guys think, if they're going to start implementing testosterone, their testicles are going to shrink. That's the biggest myth or fact.
So we'll start off with that one. So if you get on bioidentical hormones like testosterone therapy, can your testicles shrink? Yes, right? Why is that so? When you start implementing supplemental testosterone, it's either through an injection, cream, or a pellet, your body has something what is called homeostasis, right? Where basically it wants to keep things balanced. I'll give you an example of that. Your organs have to be at 98.6 degrees at all times. That's your body's core temperature. So when you go out in the cold, what gets cold first? Your nose, your ears, your fingers. That's because your blood is shunting to your organs to keep them at 98.6 degrees, right? Now, with your testosterone, same thing. Your body is producing testosterone, right, through the testicles and the hypothalamus. So at the point in time that you put supplemental testosterone, your body's going to basically read that it has enough testosterone. So it shuts off the natural production of testosterone in the testicles and the hypothalamus. So there are things to combat that when you get on testosterone therapy, something as simple as HCG. So HCG will trigger the testes to produce more of that so you don't have the shriveled up testicles.
Yeah. Do you think that can be only for a younger generation or even in men in their 50s to start with HCG, or you just go straight to testosterone shots?
No, the first thing that we like to do is start off nutrition and exercise. Because a lot of times through really good, strong strength training, exercise, and good nutrition, you can see an increase in also balancing out some of your other hormones. Now, it doesn't always work, the natural route, especially when you're so far gone,
so if you're so low.
Right. So then from there, we go into the HCG and eclomiphene. Right. So we're trying to trigger the testosterone from the testes and then also the hypothalamus, where we start getting the FSH, luteinizing hormones and everything also triggered back on.
So you try that first, retest, see where you're at. If it's not working, then implement the bioidentical testosterones. And start with the small dosage. Make sure someone is watching you or retesting you, right? So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And a little quick back to female hormones. We're all over the place, and now these days, a lot of females starting their premenopause in early 40s. I see this all the time. And what do you suggest in your med spas, your clinics for female hormones?
So there's a reason why I started off with the men's. A lot easier. Women hormones, and I think most medical providers out there will agree, are more complex.
Yeah.
Right? And they're more complex because women go through different cycles, right? When I test your blood, I can't really figure out hormone deficiencies without actually knowing where you're at in your cycle.
Exactly.
Right? You have premenopause, you have postmenopause, you have all of these other variables with age that also take an effect. There's more hormones that have to be balanced out in a woman. So my recommendation with women is don't just go to any hormone clinic. go to an expert who has fellowship trainings on female hormones. Because sometimes, with female hormones, it's not just a regular blood test, right? There's urine hormones that should be looked at.
Yeah.
There's the Dutch test. There's many other type of testing that should be done with females.
You're absolutely
Yeah.
right. By the way, I started adding a little bit testosterone to myself, and my levels were around 30, but now I'm working out 3 times a week at the gym, lifting weights, and I saw last year with my age that I wasn't putting muscles that fast as I was when I was younger, even 2 years ago. And I'm like, oh my God, aging, right? So we tested my testosterone. I was 30, and my doc goes, listen, we can go a little bit up. Let's do microdose once a week, see how we do. And so I started doing microdose, like 5 units, small little dosage once a week. Oh my God, the endurance at the gym, the stamina, the lifting weights, and the muscle mass.
It's different, right?
And just, I'm like, what's happening? This is so cool. But like, if you would ask me, just 3 years ago, like, oh, I would be doing this testosterone, I'll be like, no way, why would I need that? But knowing the data, knowing how can it actually benefit you and start small, it could be just like amazing and preventing certain, going into maybe menopause. And of course, you have to see your progesterone and, all that other stuff
Absolutely.
in a conjunction. But it's a beautiful thing to take advantage of that.
I agree. So I want to be clear about something with women taking testosterone, because there's a lot of times there's a false narrative that if women take testosterone, they're going to start growing a mustache and they're going to, the clitoris is going to become a small
Thank you
penis.
for clearing that.
So can that happen? Yes, but not at the dosage that we're talking about for women, right? That if you're taking a man's dosage, then yeah, you could probably start getting male type of things, up here.
Yeah.
So, and that's the importance of going to a professional. If you just go to the guy at the gym and go get a shot of testosterone, that's going to be a problem, right? Yes, you're going to have that
For sure.
clitoris increase and everything else. So when it comes to female testosterone, a lot of the benefits, you're talking about the lean mass, better endurance, increased libido, you feel younger again.
Yeah.
So
it's amazing. Trust me. I'm loving it so far.
Yeah, amazing.
Also, what's the biggest myth about hair loss that you've had to correct with clients?
So with hair loss, people are very quick to come in and they just want to get a hair transplant. And I had the opportunity to interview Dr. Bauman.
And mostly men.
And mostly men.
Mostly men.
Yeah. And I had the opportunity to interview Dr. Bauman, who is the #1 hair transplant surgeon in the world.
Yeah, he's
and,
great.
One of the things that he mentioned is he never starts with hair transplant, because if you start just with hair transplant, you're not correcting the issues of why they lost the hair. And then they're going to lose that hair that they get transplanted. So a lot of the times it's issues internally, hormones, right? Your DHT levels. There's other factors that go into play, like micronutrients deficiencies, right? We're looking at their biotin, their other vitamin levels in their body. So with hair loss, there's a lot of other factors that go into place, that have to be considered.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And do you think certain solutions, like there's a company that I discovered, The Roots, they do these by DNA testing. They customize certain solution to put in your scalp and then using red light therapy on top.
Yes.
And I've seen, like when Brian Johnson was talking, how it's massively improved his hair growth. And I think even Dave Asprey is talking about that too.
Right. Which, Dave Asprey speaks publicly. Dr. Bauman actually did his hair transplant.
Okay.
So, and the important part is to keep those hair follicles strong.
Right.
And part of that are some of the things that you just mentioned is doing some of these techniques and utilizing these technologies as well to make sure those hair follicles stay very strong and producing the hair. Because you got to remember, it's there's a lot of companies out there that they want to sell you a shampoo or something that changes the structure of the hair.
Right.
But remember, your hair are dead cells disposing from your body. The same thing as your nails.
Yeah.
So most of the time we got to fix things internally, and then that's where you get the good hair.
And micronutrients, do you think eating enough protein for your specific needs that also will produce certain follicles? That's what I hear.
I think protein has many benefits. I'm not too sure
Yeah.
about the hair follicles on that one. I'd have to research and understand that. But I could
Yeah.
see, protein being a benefit,
Right. Yeah. Protein is a benefit to
for
everything
everything.
in
Absolutely.
our body. People don't eat enough protein these days,
Right.
or they eat not the right protein.
Not the right protein.
Not the right protein. So, is it true that a blood test can predict how long you will live? Like notable biohackers, Gary Brecka, have claimed they can predict death to the month from blood biomarkers. How can you use those markers to change our destiny?
Oh, that's a loaded question. In me having the opportunity to interview so many people as well too, the science is really getting there. You know, when it comes to certain diseases and whatnot, they've been able to really predict many years out in advance of what you potentially might have. Obviously the blood test is not going to predict if a car comes and hits you or something like that, or if you fall off a motorcycle. That's completely different. But when they're taking a lot of these different data points and they're looking at what other people died of, and they're looking at their blood, right? And then they're utilizing all of that data and utilizing AI to really map everything out. Now they're able to actually take that blood test, just a little drop of blood from your finger, and they could actually predict 5 years out of exactly what you're going to have.
Wow, it's incredible.
It's incredible.
And I think we're just going so fast with these AI readings, and it's incredible where we're going. The longevity obsession. How far would you go? Like Brian Johnson famously spends millions to reprogram his age. Longevity has become almost a competitive sport. We see people hosting like Don't Die dinners and investing fortunes to live longer. Has the longevity movement gone too far, or is this the future of health?
I think, like anything else, you're going to find people that are diehard, like addicted to it, and like are just like strong fans behind it, and will invest everything, their time, their energy. Would I do what Brian Johnson is doing, even if I had the money that he has? Probably not, because for me, there's a balance that I need to have to be able to enjoy life. Now, if he's enjoying his life with what he's doing, awesome, And I love what he does, I love following him, watching it, and him being the guinea pig. I just don't want to be that guinea pig,
Yeah.
So I condemn them for being, the person doing it, because I think we'll be able to extract data and learn things throughout that process. But I don't think it's for everybody to actually go through the process. I'll be his fan. I'll be cheering him, and I'll support him, and participate as much as possible. But, the way that he's living his life is I can't see myself per se doing it, at least not yet.
Absolutely right.
Yeah.
So biohackers with basics, where do you stand? With Andrew Huberman popularizing simple habits like morning sunlight, sleep, cold exposures, and others pushing high-tech hacks. What's one unsexy fundamental of health people should focus on before trying latest biohack?
One unsexy thing that people should focus on. That's a good one. You got me on that one. I think and right now I wouldn't really say it's unsexy. I think for when we're talking about mass population, the hardest part for people is breaking certain habits, right? And part of breaking some of those habits is the nutrition side. I think we're in a certain day and age where eating healthy is not considered eating food that tastes like cardboard. I think there's right now things have been placed where they're readily available. If I want to go to the grocery store and buy zucchini noodles already cut up into like noodles, the zucchini, it's available. If I want to buy cauliflower rice, it's available, right? Before, you would have to actually put all this stuff together. If I wanted to go eat some pizza, and I wanted a cauliflower crust pizza or almond crust flour pizza, I would have to actually make it from scratch, which is not easy. Now you go to the grocery store and they have it ready for you to go, organic, healthy, and eating healthier is easy. So I think that's something that should be a non-negotiable, is what you're putting into your body, regardless if you think it's sexy or not. Like, what you put in your body is what your body's going to become. So if you put crap in your body's going to perform like crap. It's going to look like crap. So that should probably be the number one thing that people focus on.
So cold plunges and sauna sessions are everywhere on Instagram. Fad or future? Ice baths having become a massive wellness trend. With the cold immersion market exploding, everyone from pro athletes and CEOs is doing ice baths or infrared saunas these days. Do you do any extreme temperatures hacks, and what benefits do you see for regular folks?
Yeah, so like cold plunge, that's been around longer than what I've been alive. There's tremendous amount of benefits, especially decreasing inflammation, right? So the cold plunge, I don't do it too often, but I do believe in it. The one that I do believe in that everybody should do is the infrared sauna. There's no secret behind that. It works. It is the number one way to get rid of toxins out of your body. Mm-hmm. The number one way to get rid of toxins out of your body is sweating. My business partner, Dr. Christopher Davis, the interventional cardiologist, he specializes in toxins. That's his big thing. And he truly believes, right, based on science, that the majority of diseases come from toxins in your body. And the one thing he will say is testing thousands of patients for toxins, environmental toxins, which he looks at over 900 different toxins that they could be exposed to. He says the only patients that he doesn't find toxins in are the ones that utilize an infrared sauna every single day.
Every single day. So I know for females, you should not be in the sauna more than 40 minutes. For guys, you can be there longer, for like an hour. Is that true?
So I typically go into the infrared sauna myself about 20, 25 minutes.
Okay, that's enough. That's
max,
enough.
Yeah.
Also, what's the difference between infrared sauna and just Finnish sauna, like the normal sauna?
Yeah, so the normal sauna is the one that's typically going to have the rocks, right? And sometimes you put a little water in there to get it.
Pretty hot, like it's really hot.
Which that's not bad either. Gets you sweating.
Yeah.
But the infrared sauna has the red lights in there.
It penetrates into your bones and secretes all the toxins out. So also I hear, make sure when you're in the sauna, have a special towel to wipe off constantly that the sweat, the toxins coming out. Otherwise, if you people that are sitting there, you're actually absorbing back into your body those toxins. So make sure always, like Sunlight and Sauna, they actually sell special towels with it to like wipe yourself off.
Yeah, because remember, it's coming out the sweat, but your skin can absorb anything. The same way you put on some kind of medication, it gets absorbed directly into your body. But so the infrared sauna has other benefits for like mitochondrial health and many other things. So it is the better sauna to have.
Yeah. I have it in my house and I love it so much. I use it like 2-3 times a week. I wish I could do it more.
Amazing.
But travels don't permit me. But and every time I use it, oh my God, you can see your skin is
feel
glowing.
Good. Oh, yeah.
You sleep much better, and just the youth, it just comes like if you use it constantly. Let's say if I have that 4 days in a row, I'm like, oh my goodness, it's so amazing. So also you have your famous podcast. You interview a lot of amazing people in the wellness industry. What have you learned yourself from interviewing these amazing people?
So I learned a lot, right? So my podcast, it's called A Healthy Point of View Podcast. And the reason why I launched the podcast is growing up the way that I grew up, where things like this was not readily available. It wasn't easily accessible. And one of my goals is to bring health and wellness to the masses. And a lot of people can't afford a lot of these biohacking treatments, right? They're expensive. But the number one thing when it comes to health and wellness, and this is one thing that I learned when I worked as a firefighter-paramedic, is there's a huge lack in education. People being able to know what to do, know what to eat, right? So that's why I actually started the podcast, is to be able to help people understand and be educated where they don't have to pay anything to do it. They just go on YouTube, go on Spotify, listen to the podcast,
Yeah.
and you might learn something.
It's
So
beautiful.
I've learned a lot. I bring experts from all over the world, with some of the greatest technologies in the whole biohacking game. And it's, sometimes I bring people where I walk out of the podcast room scratching my head. It's
It's like, wow, I
I don't know
just
what the heck I just listened to, but okay, But yeah, it's interesting.
you're even like
It's
learning
interesting.
yourself and
Yeah.
growing from it. And even Forbes magazine, they compared you to Dr. Oz and Dr. Show, and they were saying there's a Sam Tejada in the future coming and having his daytime show. Hopefully that will happen soon.
That'd be pretty cool. You know what? I got to get a little bit out of my comfort zone for something like that. But I'm really big into like self development. So I'm actually well, this is my first time actually announcing it. So we do a Vibe conference, right? Which is part of the association. It's the Vitamin Infusion Business
Okay.
Expo. We do it once a year. We bring this year we'll have over 1,500 doctors
Oh,
there to learn.
wow.
And they asked me, the association says, hey, you should MC the 2 days. Me be the one on stage.
Yeah.
Like Sam doesn't MC events. Like I'll go up there and speak for a keynote. But then I said, you know what?
Take
It's
that
time to
leap.
get out of get out of my
get out
comfort
of your
zone.
comfort zone. I think
So I'm gonna do it.
it's always good to do it.
Yeah.
I've pushed myself all my life to get out of my comfort zone because we live once and one night do it.
Right.
You just have to I'm sure first time it's not going to be the best, but you'll learn a lot, and the next one is going to be
Oh, I'm doing it.
impactful.
Yeah, I'm doing it, and I know I'll do good. I speak in front of a lot of people all the time, so
Yeah.
I'm excited about it.
And you have incredible book. Let's talk about your book. What was the most challenging part of writing your book, How to Win in Modern Wellness? And what's the one message you hope readers take away from this? And also explain me, you said on the cover of your book, there's leading doctors that
Yeah.
you've interviewed.
So when I got into this industry, it was a very cutthroat mentality.
By the way, it's #1 Amazon bestseller, you guys. Check
Thank
it
you.
out.
Yeah, so when I got into the industry, it was a very cutthroat mentality with the competition. And, the hard part for me, it's hearing all of my competitors basically preach the same thing. Let's change the course of medicine. We want everybody to take a proactive approach, to their health. And, understanding history, the way that people would always win in history was divide and conquer, right? So I told myself, I says, well, if we're divided, we're never going to win against the bigger bodies that are out there, big pharma and everybody else. So I told myself, I says, I'm not going to be playing this cutthroat mentality. Whoever's my competitor, I'm going to embrace it. Let's work together. So I built relationships with all the CEOs of these big companies that were my competitors. And about 8 years in, I hired a publicist. When I was telling the publicist my story, the publicist said, you have to put a book together with all these people. I said, okay. So that's what I did. I took a lot of these relationships that have some of the biggest companies, Forever Young, Restore, 10X Health, all of these different leaders. And I give them a chapter in the book for us to talk about how we're all winning in this world of modern wellness. So the goal there, this book is not just for end consumers. It's also for medical providers
Oh, wow.
that want to get out of the traditional system, because everyone in there talks about their story of how they started.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Right.
I love that. So since publishing your book, have you noticed a shift in how people approach wellness or the kinds of questions they ask you?
Yeah, so looking at all the different chapters in the book, everyone offers different type of services, modalities. So people do question like, okay, well, what's really going to be it for me? And it's actually a lot of those questions have led to my third book I'm going to write, because my second book, we're finalizing it now. That one's more on the business side.
Okay.
But the third book that I've already started is called Your Wellness Data.
Okay.
And I have a lot of people I'm interviewing in the book, which include the founders of Pinoy, Prenuvo, the full body MRI, blood tests like True Diagnostics. So, and really allowing people to really take the next step of when they're asking, well, what's best for them, is understanding your data.
That's beautiful. I love that. There's no such book.
Not yet.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
This is exciting. So if you could completely solve one single health-related issue in America right now, what would it be?
The food, what we're putting into our bodies. We got to get that toxic stuff out of there. That is really the toxic environment, the toxic food, the nutrients dense food. That's what's killing people.
And do you think we are in the right direction? Is it changing?
Right now, yes. With RFK Jr. in leading HHS, yeah.
I love to hear that.
Yeah.
Beautiful. What's next for Liquivida? Are there any new wellness innovations or expansions you are particularly excited about?
So our goal is to really create a larger national footprint, even potentially a global footprint in other areas. Liquivida is strategically working with other big players in the game, or we're strategically working together on how we can elevate each other. Not disclosing any proprietary information amongst the companies, but our goal is to really bring health and wellness to the masses.
Beautiful. What's the single most important takeaway you'd love our listeners to remember? And if someone listening right now is eager to start improving their health, what's the number one piece of advice of actionable step you'd recommend?
The first step is making the commitment. You just have to be committed to yourself that you're going to do it, right? And you have to manifest this, that you're going to take control of your health. From there, the next step is understanding your body's makeup, which is your body's personal data. And then from there, once you have that data, you're going to know exactly what you need.
Ultimately, what does true success look like for you, both personally and professionally?
Ooh, I love that question. So everyone should define their own personal definition of success. Because when it comes to me, success is not about money. It actually has nothing to do with money. For me, my definition of success is being able, number one, to leave a legacy behind, that I was a businessman that cared for the people. And then number two, that I was able to make the change that our world needed, which is specific to health and wellness. So for me, being in this role as the CEO and founder of Liquivida, the chairman of the association, that's just leading me to the next step, right? My ultimate goal is to be in a political seat in legislation to change a lot of these antiquated regulations that have been put in place and really allow the people to take control of their health and allow the doctors to do what they need to really do to help their patients.
That's beautiful. You've done so much in such a short time, and you're still young, and you have so much to go. It's very inspirational. I can't wait to see what's happening more in the future and what you're going to do impact health and people around the world. Thank you so much for coming here into Hollywood, into my studio. I can't wait to have you back, and we can talk more about other things that you're working on your second book and your third book. So it was incredible.
Thank you. I love it. I appreciate you, and this was phenomenal. This is how we get the word out to the masses, by doing what we're doing right now.
Thank you.
All right.
From rescuing people in emergency to empowering them to live a healthier life, Sam Tejada has been a guardian in every sense. Truly inspirational. Sam, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your incredible journey. It's been fascinating to learn about your work and how IV therapy, hormone optimization, and proactive health solutions are helping people feel stronger and healthier. For everyone listening, if you'd like to learn more about Sam's work or how Liquivida can support your wellness journey, make sure to check out Liquivida's website and follow them on social media. All the links are in the description below. Thanks so much for tuning in. Stay healthy, stay empowered, and remember, wellness is life.